come to our final race weekend of the season in Abu Dhabi. Sadly, this is the last race, but we do get some upgrades, and the series will definitely be back for 2024, even more grand and much better than it was in 23. And I just wanted to thank you guys for sticking around with every single video that I upload, but I know a lot of you guys stick around for these types of videos, the upgrade videos, and just know in 24 it'll be even more grand with so many more upgrades, because that year is supposed to be very crazy when it comes to upgrades. 23 was kind of this in between year because 22 had that little jump, but now with upgrades staying consistent, 24 will be huge because 25 the cars are changing. So it will be a big thing, and definitely stay on the channel and subscribe and like if you're new here. That would mean a lot for me. Let's get into the upgrades coming into Abu Dhabi and really the parts coming here for the cars. So while there isn't a lot of big upgrades, teams will test stuff here. Aston Martin will be one of those teams. They've been consistently testing, and they actually said somewhere around the Mexico Grand Prix, actually I think it was Austin, they said it, parts will be coming all the way up until Abu Dhabi. Well, I'm here to tell you that that won't happen. There won't be any new parts here. Will they optimize the car? Maybe, because they actually had a couple parts in Las Vegas. Now these parts were very tiny minor adjustments, a little bit on the engine cover and on the front wing just by the tiniest bit, so they had a little bit more straight line speed, and they used that engine cover to actually excel the air more towards its beam wing. But expect them to optimize the car here. They say they're going for that 4th place, taking it over McLaren. I think it's going to be a tall task. That really requires Alonso and Lance both getting practically on the podium, with the McLarens barely scoring. It's not really going to happen. On this track, they will be strong, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're going to be the best car here. Ferrari is done completely. We've said this before, and I'm saying it again. Nothing will be actually brought to this car. No parts are going to be tested. They've tested what they needed to. Nothing else really to get into for that team. As for Mercedes, they're done too. They're done with the Frankenstein car. It's enough of that. They're finally going to their new car for 24. No postseason tests. Aston Martin actually might run a couple of postseason tests because they do have that postseason testing, which is not very long. It's like 1 day, but it's a lot of laps. So expect, like I said, Aston Martin might bring something here to test on their car for a longer period of time. That is kind of the idea with bringing upgrades to Abu Dhabi. You get to actually test it on the track. So who knows what type of cars will be coming here and what type of optimization we'll even see for teams like, I guess, Ferrari and Aston Martin and even Mercedes. But a team that I think will bring some parts here will be Red Bull. So we're getting more and more news actually on the car and what the RB20 is going to be. They really didn't spend a lot of their budget cap this year. Honestly, they've been probably the lowest on actual bringing cars, with the exception of Haas, because, they're great. So they don't really need to bring parts. The car is too good for that. But besides that point, though, the Red Bull will be bringing some stuff here, probably to test out. They tested something in Mexico for the floor. I think it was tested on Perez at that time. Now I think they might bring back another part to test, but either for Max or for Perez. I do know that both drivers are sitting out for FP1 for 2 different rookies. So it comes to show you where their level-headedness is. They know that they're the best. They got their P1 and P2 positions. So they're completely fine for the year. They don't really care what happens in Abu Dhabi. Kind of the same thing that happened in 2020 when Mercedes was so ahead. They didn't really care what happened in Abu Dhabi. Red Bull took the win. So maybe we see a different winner. That would be awesome. But expect them to optimize the car here. See what they can actually extract out of the car before the RB20. See where the airflow goes. You already know Newey. He can see through anything. And that is really it for the top teams. But the actual teams bringing parts here, and a team that I really deeply want to cover because they are actually an important team for next year. There is another team bringing in it, and I guess I'll briefly cover them. Alfa Romeo, the car has been nowhere practically all year. Hasn't really achieved much. They're bringing a new front wing. I'm assuming they're doing this to test for their new car upcoming, because they said their actual new Alfa Romeo car will be completely different. And it won't be Alfa Romeo, it'll just be Sauber, but it's a completely different car in that wind tunnel coming into 24. So that'll be exciting to see a completely different car on the grid rather than the car we got this year, even though the livery was so sick. But sadly, the car itself is just awful. But the biggest upgrade here is AlphaTauri, and they're bringing a big boy. They're bringing an actual new floor here to test out for their, what you can essentially call the RB19 of 2024. So they brought something to Singapore that wasn't really talked about up until recently, where actually Yuki talked about a suspension change on the car. They actually changed the rear suspension in Singapore. This comes to show you though that teams can change it if they were wanting to change it. They changed that rear suspension to what the RB19 is now, which is that push rod in the back and pull rod in the front. This is what gives them that advantage on being able to lower the car more than any other team. And I guarantee just off of that alone, AlphaTauri has gained so much more performance. Now this car is a drag monster, so there is a lot of issues with it, but still, they were actually in Mexico like the 3rd or 4th fastest car on pace. This car was the worst and the most awful car in the beginning of the year, but they have made it work consistently now in the past couple of rounds. Yes, Vegas wasn't good, huge straightaways. Brazil, super strong. Daniel Ricciardo was almost as fast as Fernando Alonso, except he had to start from the back from the whole entire FIA BS. So this car is super strong, and now with a new floor, which will probably take after the Venturi tunnels on the actual Red Bull, and really what's down under that car, that beautifulness, probably going to take a tip out of that. You already know that Red Bull's been whispering in their ear what to do and kind of where to go with this car. Somebody made a good point when the last upgrade was actually brought to the car, and I'm going to go along with this theory. I think AlphaTauri is actually testing parts for the RB20. That's my theory. I think as them being a sister team for Red Bull, they still kind of, whisper in their ear, test here, test here. They brought the most amount of upgrades this year. They've still been a bad car, but who knows how much actual aero gain Red Bull has gotten off of this. Now, they're located in 2 different locations. One's in Italy, the other one's in Britain, but you know how these teams work, especially with it being a sister team. This team is essentially kind of there to help out Red Bull. They did that for the year that they brought in that Honda engine, and now they're kind of doing it again with the aero gains because there is no real power differences in these power units. At least that's the thought process behind it. So that's kind of what I'm expecting with this floor. Could have some revised changes to what the actual overpowered RB19 has, but expect this car in 24 to be pretty much virtually the same as the RB19. I don't think that's going to mean it's going to be the strongest car on the grid, but they're definitely going to be up there competing. They're already strong enough, and this suspension has come to prove that new teams need to adopt it. Mercedes, Ferrari, Aston Martin, they all got to look into their rear suspension being push rod and their front suspension being pull rod, being able to lower that car. It doesn't seem like it's the most complicated process to get it down if AlphaTauri got it clocked on right away. But I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Sadly, the last video. I hope you guys enjoyed for the biggest upgrades. I'll see you guys in 2024 for the biggest upgrades series. Please leave a like, subscribe, it would mean the world, and peace.